Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience.
My dear friend, where have you been? Where have you gone? Where did you win? Someone there, are you listening? Is it too late? My dear friend.
If you find other people that have big goals and you won't feel as crazy, you'll be motivated. Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience. Today we have a very special guest. He is an amateur MMA fighter from St. Louis, Missouri. He trains out of Saint Charles MMA. He's won all of his fights by way of submission. He is coming off of a first-round submission win in Nemesis Fighting Alliance. He is looking to possibly compete in the 135 division and go after 2 championship belts after winning his first championship belt on his past fight. So I'm very excited to learn more about his background in martial arts and what his goals are for the future. So let's go ahead and bring on Clayton Berry. You're coming off of a huge win in Nemesis Fighting Alliance. You won the title, and you won that fight. Was that, I believe it was an armbar submission?
Yes, it was an armbar.
The first round?
Yes.
Nice. Is that how you envision yourself winning the fight, or did you kind of just find that opportunity when you were in there?
Well, all of my submissions before that were chokes, so I was kind of envisioning like a choke. But you know, it was nice to finally get like an armbar finish because that was my first submission that wasn't a choke, so that was nice.
Oh, really? Yeah, because you had the arm triangle, you had a rear naked choke, I think, and then did you have another one besides that?
So it was my first one was a rear naked choke. The second one was an anaconda choke. The third one was an anaconda choke, and then the fourth one was an armbar.
Nice. Yeah, the anaconda, you don't see that much on the amateur circuit.
Yeah, not too much. You see more darces, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So when did you start learning jiu-jitsu?
In 2018, like at the very end of 2018, that's when I signed up at Saint Charles MMA. And that's the only MMA gym, I've ever trained at. So I've learned everything there. I trained at Team Vaghi headquarters once, the headquarters for the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But yeah, St. Charles MMA is my home, and that's where I want to stay, for my whole career.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're definitely known for their grappling. I've trained at St. Charles, and I trained boxing there, so I didn't get to experience the grappling as much, but I would see them training in there when I was training boxing, and it just seemed like they were just on a different level. I took one jiu-jitsu class there, and yeah, I mean, Mike knows what he's talking about. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, Mike is the man. So it's pretty cool to see how many really talented grapplers have been coming out of there, especially lately. I don't know. You guys have just been on fire lately, and I don't know what it is. I guess it's just the momentum of everybody that's kind of been winning and doing really well, not only in MMA and in jiu-jitsu, but also like Derek Albright had the Muay Thai fight. So it's really cool to see. So you started training there. So you've been training jiu-jitsu for, I guess, almost 6 years or 5.5 years or somewhere around there?
Yeah, around that.
Okay, cool.
And I started wrestling when I was 6 years old at the Wentzville Holt Wrestling Club. Yeah. So I grew up wrestling my whole life. And I've told it before that I wanted to train at St. Charles MMA as a kid, but my parents and my coaches at the time thought that it'd be better for me to just focus on my wrestling. And I'm happy it went the way it did because, I might not be as good as I am at wrestling if I would have, started other stuff sooner. But everyone has their own path, though, so it's, it's not a one-way path for everyone,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everyone has their own unique route to competing in MMA. I mean, look at Bo Nickel. Look how much he's already accomplished. He's been on a main card at one of the biggest UFC pay-per-views ever. So in a very short period of time, I mean, I think that was his 5th pro fight or his 6th pro fight or something like that.
I think so 6,
yeah, it's crazy. So it's like, if you have a strong background in one area of martial arts, it really is not unrealistic to fast track your career. And especially now, I feel like there's in certain divisions, opportunities like, especially like in your division, I think in 145, there are opportunities for grapplers to really have a lot of success. And also in 135 too. I feel like 135 right now is probably the most stacked division, but you did mention after winning the 145 belt in Nemesis, you mentioned that you might be interested in moving down to 135, and you mentioned that you don't really cut a whole lot of weight at 145.
No, and I'm gonna be completely honest. Like, I never thought of even possibly going down. I just wanted to, bulk up and just become a big 45er. But Mike kind of convinced me that I can still gain some muscle, and I could still make the 35, and that'd be a good weight class for me. Because everybody I've gone against so far has either been my size or bigger, except for maybe one guy. There was one guy I fought for in Shamrock. And he was actually like a 35er that was coming up. But other than that, everybody else has been like bigger than me.
Yeah, I noticed that because Zach fought at 155 before and dropped to 145 to fight you. So he was, a bigger 145er. So that's good that you've been fighting guys that are bigger. So then when you go down, it's going to be like you're going to have an advantage already because you can hang with the bigger guys. And yeah, I mean, as long as you get the weight cut dialed in, then yeah, I mean that would be interesting at bantamweight, because I feel like there's a lot of submission specialists at bantamweight, but not as many as there are in like 155 and the other divisions. I feel like there's like maybe more strikers and just well-rounded MMA fighters rather than like submission artists. So that could be really interesting. I don't know. There could be some interesting opportunities in that division, but on a local level, I don't know as much about like, all the other fighters in that division. I know a lot of them, but yeah, that's really cool. And to be able to have 2 belts as an AME is, that's awesome. And then that'll give you confidence when you're getting into your pro career. Like, okay, as an AME, like this is what I accomplished, and then you can do the same thing as a pro. So that's really cool. So getting back to your martial arts history, so you started training wrestling when you were 6 years old, and you did that for a long time, and then you started training at Saint Charles MMA. Did you start with just jiu-jitsu, or were you training other areas of martial arts as well?
Well, I think the first thing I did was I hit the bags. And then I started going to the morning jiu-jitsu classes. There was like a 6 a.m. class that they still have now that I went to. Yeah, I think actually, that was my first jiu-jitsu class, was a 6 a.m. class. And I was just learning like how to like shrimp, to regard and stuff like that, and just hitting the bags. And I knew right away I wanted to sign up, and the rest is history. Been there ever since, and I'm happy for the opportunity to train there. I literally live right down the road. Like I could jog there. Yeah, I could jog there in literally like less than 10 minutes. So it's really nice.
Oh, that's super nice. Yeah, that is important. I feel like I've always lived far from every gym that I've ever trained at, so I've never known what it's like to be able to just like slide on over to the gym. I'm kind of jealous because that would be nice. And then you can train more. And right now, it's probably not as pressing, but as a pro, you definitely want to have that time to train. How often are you training on average right now?
I try and train every day, but there's some days where I take off. I listen to my body if I'm like, cramping, or something like that, or just I know when to take it off just so I don't, try and sprain anything. Because I was back in January, I was supposed to fight for a title in New York City for the Flex Fight Series, and I sprained my knee like right before it, and I thought it was major.
Oh gosh!
So that's why I pulled out. It's the only fight I've ever pulled out of, and because it was like a week before, and I felt like a pop when I was in like the 50-50 position. Luckily, it was just like a minor sprain, but I pulled out that day because I went to the hospital, and they were like, they did x-rays and stuff, and it was just like I could barely move it. It was very uncomfortable, basically. But that's the only time I've ever pulled out of a fight. And so now it's like I want to make sure I listen to my body. I stretch a lot. If I ever have to take a day off, I rest really well. I make sure I get plenty of sleep, take naps, and when I can, take a nap.
That's good. Yeah. So when did you decide, because you were talking about how you had been kind of thinking about training at Saint Charles MMA back when you were wrestling. When did you kind of know that you wanted to be a fighter? When did that kind of idea pop into your head, I guess?
I was still in high school. It was like right when I was about to graduate high school, actually, because I thought I was going to wrestle in college, and then I, you know, I just ended up not wrestling in college. I decided, I just want to do MMA instead, and I signed up, and I'm happy I did. I'm very happy I did.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you work full time. Are you in school or anything too?
No, no.
So you're done with school? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. At least you have that off your plate.
Yeah.
That would be a
School's out.
lot if you were doing everything. Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, that's good. So you work full time and you're balancing that with fighting. How is that? I mean, you're pretty young, and a lot of people your age, they like to, have fun and socialize. And how do you balance everything in your life?
I mean, how do I balance everything? I'd say, I definitely have plenty of time for fun. I like to I like to play video games. That's one thing I do for fun. Like while I listen to podcasts,
Yeah,
I listen to different podcasts while I play video games, and I like going outside, playing basketball at the park. Throw the football around. I grew up playing football. So I really love football. I was like a defensive back and a wide receiver. I played actually about as long as I started. I started wrestling when I was 6, and then tackle football when I was 7, and I did both all the way till I was 17. So I had a lot of football experience. But yeah, I just like doing active stuff, like going to the park, just things like that.
Yeah, so basically you've just been an athlete your entire life, and I guess, yeah, it's kind of a similar schedule because when you're in school, that's kind of, taking up the time that you would be at like a job as an adult, and then you have, your sport that you have to train, every day. And so I guess that's why a lot of athletes end up going into MMA too as an adult, because they're like, okay, well, this is a way I can make money. And, and for some of them, it works out great. Some of them not so much, but, it seems like being an athlete does give you an advantage, especially if you're an athlete with a martial arts background. That's what makes people really dangerous. Like John Jones, for example, he's an athlete and he has a very strong martial arts background, and he's not the only one, obviously. I'm thinking of like somebody like even Alex Pereira, I don't know if he played like sports or anything, but like he was already a combat sports athlete. So I just think coming into it with some sort of background, has to give you an advantage, just because you're used to the discipline, you're used to the schedule, or you're used to the winning and losing aspect of it. You're used to the ups and downs. I think it prepares you a lot better mentally for the sport, I guess you could say. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And yeah, definitely, I would say wrestling is definitely a great thing to do, to going into MMA, obviously. I mean, that's obvious. But then even like football, like if you're a great like defensive player, like good at tackling people, that's going to translate into MMA too,
Yeah. Yeah,
and just
exactly.
That confidence, like you said, that confidence of just knowing that you can go into a fight, and you could get, your bell rang, you get a little, minor concussion, but you're going to, bounce back and you're going to win,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think handling the ups and downs has probably got to be one of the hardest things. Maybe not as an amateur, but definitely as a pro or a career fighter for sure, is handling the ups and downs, because, there are some exceptions, like Poirier right now is an undefeated champion, and there are some undefeated champions, but for the most part, it's really hard to be an undefeated champion anymore. And so, at some point, a lot of fighters are going to experience some type of loss, whether it's a bad loss or, a loss that was like a close fight. It doesn't matter. It's probably going to happen at some point if you make it to that level. So it's like you have to really mentally prepare yourself for that. And I feel like that was like probably one of the harder things for me, because like I didn't come from like an athletic background. Like I played sports with my friends and stuff for fun, but like I never was like really like part of a team or part of a sport when I was growing up, besides like I did soccer when I was like a little kid or whatever, but I don't count that. But then I didn't develop that type of a like, I guess, routine. So I had to develop that as an adult, and it's a lot harder to do as an adult than it is when you're younger, because you're so used to living your life a certain way. And then now it's like, okay, now I'm incorporating this training and I'm working full time and I have to make sure that I give myself enough time to rest. And I feel like that's the hard part for a lot of people when they don't come from an athletic background, is they don't know how to recover. So what are some things that you have learned and that you think could help other people with recovery as far as like being an athlete and being an MMA fighter?
The first two things that come to mind is stretching. I don't think enough people stretch, before and after practice. Anytime I run beginners MMA at Saint Charles MMA on Thursday nights, I make sure we stretch, before and after. And then also hydrating, just drinking a lot of water. Really, water is like the main thing I drink. Like I don't drink much more than water, And I make my smoothies. I make like a pitcher of like a smoothie with, I put like raw eggs, frozen fruit, and pecans in it with a little cinnamon. And I just have like a cup of that a day for my breakfast. And yeah, because I really don't like eating much during the day. I'm more just eat at night, like one big meal a night.
Yeah, I've kind of been experimenting with that. I don't know what I like the best, but it seems like when I eat more, I'm more tired. Like not necessarily like the caloric amount of what I'm eating, but just the frequency of how I'm eating. Like if I'm eating too often, I feel like it kind of slows me down a little bit.
I'm happy you bring that up because on the fight day, like I barely eat anything. Like even on a jiu-jitsu tournament, like if I eat, I don't ever want to risk like throwing up because like I have my stomach can be kind of sensitive, so like I don't want to ever risk throwing up. So like I just don't even eat much the day of my fights. I just make sure I drink like Pedialyte, maybe have like a Cliff Bar, get some protein in, a little bit of protein, and like that's it. And that's like hours.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I've been dealing with that lately with like trying to get rid of some acid reflux issues. And I've noticed that, eating less seems to be helping me. But like eating like really like something really nutritious and something that is giving me enough calories to where I don't need to eat, like 5 different meals because I don't know. It's something about it. And I feel like I can think a little bit more clearly when I haven't been eating all day. And I don't know, but like some people might hear me say this and be like, oh, that's like an eating disorder. But it's like, no, I just like I'm trying to figure out what works best for my body.
Yeah, I think
and I'm listening to my body.
Everyone's different,
Yeah.
on how their biology is. I really love beef and chicken. Like that's mostly all I eat is like steak, ground beef, a lot of steaks. I eat like a lot of steaks and then chicken. And then I'm not a big vegetable guy. I'll have little vegetables, but I really just like meat and some fruit. I really like fruit, like all different types.
Yeah,
of
me
fruit.
too.
Yeah, mangoes, watermelon, strawberry, like anything, like any type of fruit I like.
Yeah, that's why I love summertime because now all of like the really good fruit is in season, like dragon fruit and mango and like random stuff that like you can't really eat as much like during the wintertime. So it's cool. Because I feel like there's and I don't know, like I feel like everyone is different. A diet works differently for everyone depending on what their goals are. Some people, their goal might be more convenience oriented because of their situation. If they travel a lot for their job or whatever, like some people just need convenience. But I think, most athletes and people who are, at least training, even if you're not competing, still if you're training, you have to kind of have your nutrition dialed in if you want to perform. So I feel like, finding a diet that works for you is important, but like, so there's so much misinformation out there that it's like people, I have people tell me this all the time. Like, they're like, I don't know what to believe and what not to believe because I hear, vegan is good. I hear carnivore is good. I hear meat is bad. I hear, vegetables are bad. Like people are saying vegetables are bad now. People are saying everything is bad. So
I've done the carnivore diet before. I did it for about a year back in 2019. I felt great from it. I'm not gonna lie, I did feel great, but I got like way too skinny. Like I feel like I had like no extra like I don't know. I just don't like getting that skinny. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather like be able to have some. That's just me. But yeah, the carnivore diet,
Yeah.
you'll feel good from it, but you're not gonna. You'll shed like everything, like, you know.
Yeah.
At least me.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's different for everyone, but that was how it was for me.
Yeah, I tried not the I didn't go full carnivore because that to me was like too much. But I did just meat and fruit, and I found that was better, but I couldn't really. It was good if I wasn't training. I'll say that. It was very good if I was not training. So if I was ever like injured or something, like maybe I would go back to that diet, like if I couldn't train for a while, but I noticed that when I added back, like I started adding things back in, like I would add back in like potatoes, and I would add back in like vegetables and like rice and stuff like that. And when I added things back in, I would just pay very close attention to how I felt when I started reintroducing things. And then I figured out that like, oh yeah, potatoes don't bother me at all. And rice does not bother me at all. And like these things that I thought bothered me actually don't. And really what I figured out is that it's a lot of the like just processed food that we all are like completely just is everywhere in every store, in every, it's so hard not to eat it. It's like, it's so hard. But like, I just have figured out that, you know, and I can have some once in a while. I'm not going to be like crazy, like one of those crazy diet people that like, you know, unless I'm like training for something, then yeah. But like, I think that is a real problem. And I think I don't know. I
agree.
I've just noticed that with me at least, and I have an autoimmune disease, so I'm a little different, but I don't know. I think a lot of people have autoimmune diseases now too. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe that's part of the reason why, you know, that so many people are having like health problems now and all this stuff. And, you know, I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
I think it's a variety of things. I mean, there's a lot of toxins just in everything if you think about it. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
Toxins, like in food, everything. The water. I don't drink any tap water, but for people that are drinking tap water, like, good luck to you, is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Like, this stuff is not good for you. A lot of the stuff that's out there.
Crazy. Yeah, I know. There's like every once in a while I have to drink tap water if I'm somewhere and they don't have like regular like filtered water
lucky.
or whatever.
I'm not trying to make fun of people who have to. It's just I feel lucky, but it's like it's.
I know. But it's like, yeah. I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, even just getting like one of those little filters at the store. I mean, I think they cost like $10 or like $20 or something like that. Like, but even just one of those is better.
What I'm worried about is the fluoride mostly. I know that like can do stuff to your brain, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they completely get rid of everything. I don't know what they get rid of, but I'm assuming that would even at least be better than nothing. But I don't know. There's a lot of crazy stuff like in just everything that we consume.
Well, I know the plastic ain't good for. I drink a lot of bottled water. I know the plastic ain't good, but I mean, you gotta choose. You want some plastic?
I know.
Or
I know, it's basically what it is. It's like, how much are you willing to tolerate? Like, because you're probably going to have to tolerate a little bit, but, you know, like, how much are you willing to kind of be like, okay, cool, you know, I'll deal with this, but I'm not eating, you know, anything from these, you know, certain fast food places or whatever. Like, you know, I'm not going to drink tap water and, like, stuff like that.
Especially now that they're allowed to, like, sell processed, like, not processed, like, literally lab-grown meat, like, you gonna eat some lab-grown meat? I'm not. No, thank you.
No, I'm good on that. I am good on that. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's too much for me. If you would have came at me with that when I was like in high school or like middle school, I'd probably be like, sure, whatever. Like, I don't care. But now that I've like, that's the thing people don't understand. It's like you learn these things over time. Like you learn these things through your own experiences. And you learn what affects your body. And when you start to realize it, then you're like, oh no, I'm not like eating that anymore, or I'm not drinking that anymore. Like, no, because I know that is not good for me. So it's like, you know, everyone's calls it bro science sometimes, but it's like, dude, I mean, I just listen to my body. That's what I do. And I think that's what everybody should do. And if you listen to your body and you can eat Pop-Tarts every day and you can drink tap water and you're fine, then go for it. You know, like that's, yeah, have at it. More power to you. I wish I could do that, but I can't because I feel it and I know what it's doing to me. So
not
it's
even
like,
not even just physically, but like mentally, like you'll just feel like
yes,
depressed the next day, like just like down, you know, in the dumps. Like I even, for me, like I had to quit caffeine because like caffeine, like coffee, like I would feel good for like 30 minutes and then the rest of the day I would just feel like anxious and like paranoid.
Really?
Like I literally quit caffeine because of it. Like I just couldn't deal with it.
I've been thinking about quitting caffeine, but it's so hard because I'm so tired all the time. So I'm like,
and you do feel good from it for like the first hour or so, but if, at least for me, like I feel bad afterwards. Like
really
anxious. I don't know.
Yeah, I might have to think about at least cutting out a little bit of it or taking a break from it and see how I feel. But it's hard. Caffeine's been like the one.
How much you're having to. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I usually try to space mine out. I usually try not to drink too much all at the same time because then that's when you get crazy. I used to do that when I used to drink pre-workout. Yeah.
I've been there.
I was on my pre-workout kick for a while and I would drink so much caffeine at once and then go work out, go crazy at the gym, and then I'd come home and just be exhausted. Just be totally, completely exhausted. So, and I'll be exhausted after workout anyways, but I'm like, why am I making this 10 times worse on myself? Like, what?
Yeah. I've just noticed, like, I feel more, like, confident and better, like, when I'm calm. Like, when I'm calm, like, going into a fight, like, when I'm walking out into a fight, if I can just, that's why I like to, like, rest my eyes. Like, I'll just lay down and rest my eyes. Like, I'll watch the fights, too, but, like, a lot of times I'll be, like, laying down, just resting my eyes, just trying to calm down, like, stay calm before the fight. That makes me feel better going in.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you about because I've noticed that, you know, some fighters, like, it's really interesting seeing how fighters are before they walk out. And, you know, I've watched videos of, like, Charles Oliveira. I've watched videos of, like, other fighters, like, you know, champions and, like, you know, Alex Pereira before UFC 300 was, like, in the back just, like, goofing around. And so everybody's kind of different. You know, do you think that that's kind of a more individual thing of what works for you know, each individual fighter? Or is there, you know, a way to kind of prepare for a fight on fight day or a certain mindset that you think is best for going into a fight?
It's really hard to say that there's one way best for everybody because, yeah, everybody just thinks differently. Some people fight better when they're, like, go out there angry. You know, some people go out, feel better when they're relaxed. Like I feel better when I'm relaxed. You know, yeah, but for me, like, I like to just stay as relaxed as I can most of the day during the fight day and then, like, hit the pads, get a good sweat going, get, like, that adrenaline dump out of the way because the adrenaline dump's real. You could definitely feel that if you don't get that out of the way. But, yeah, and I just think I like to just watch movies that are just, like, or, like, listen to podcasts just aren't about fighting, just kind of just forget about fighting for a little bit leading up to the fight on fight day and then just be ready to go. Yeah,
definitely. Do you like to be more isolated on fight day, or do you like to be around people? Or you like
to be around
turn
people.
Phone on do not disturb? Like,
it's kind of a mix of both, really. Because I know you need to be talking to your coaches and your teammates and hitting pads and, you know, coming with the game plan. But I also do like to, like, kind of just be in my own mind and kind of just, like, meditate. Really, like, you know, just kind of just like manifesting what you really want to happen in the fight. You know. Which for me is always a first round finish. Like, I'm always going in there trying to get a first round finish.
Nice. Yeah, so you're kind of, I guess, visualizing that for yourself.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's really interesting. So when you're going into these fights, like, something that I've noticed is that just the level of competition on the amateur circuit has seemed to really have increased in a short period of time. Like, just it's almost like you're watching pro fights now just because of the training and the background that a lot of the amateur fighters have, and a lot of people have been training for a long time already heading into their amateur career. So I find it really interesting, and I wanted to ask you kind of, I don't know, I guess, like, what is the mental preparation like for an amateur fight? Are you implementing a lot of strategy? Are you, you know, watching film on your opponent? Or I guess, what's the preparation like for you?
Oh yeah, I've always studied film on all of my opponents. I've studied all their fights. Um,
Nice.
and yeah, so I always have some type of a game plan, but it usually just involves, me taking them down and then, submitting them. But I'm trying to, I think something to be really nice for me moving down to 135. I'll actually have like a reach advantage for once. So I think that'll help with my
Yeah.
strike, with some counter striking. I could get a knockout, start getting some knockouts. Because I know that's going to sell tickets. That's just going to, increase, you know, my opportunities is, to just also get knockouts. And then I want to get ground and pound TKOs too. So that I was also thinking about that, possibly happened in the last fight. But that guy was really strong. I'm not going to lie. He was extremely strong.
Yeah, I could tell. Yeah, he
Yeah.
looked really big in there for 145. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great win. And that's, a good high caliber opponent that you beat and you won the title. So that's really exciting. And I guess besides, like, now you're kind of planning on, like, moving down to 135 and you talked to Mike about it. And so beyond that, I mean, do you have, like, an ultimate goal or dream or just a list of, like, I guess, accomplishments that you want in your career? I guess, like, what is your overall purpose for your MMA career?
Yeah. So my goal right now is to get a UFC contract. Well, first I want to go pro, and then get a UFC contract, and then be in the UFC as long as I can, and then my end goal is to own my own MMA league one day. I want to be the
Nice.
next, you name it. I just want to have my own MMA league, and because I've always liked, growing up, I've always loved watching fighting, and I've always liked, this, making brackets. Like I would just make brackets for no reason back in the day, and just like see who I thought would win in the UFC, who would win in this wrestling match. Talking about college wrestling, like who would have.
Yeah.
So I've always been into like the stats and stuff like that. So I just think that I would really like doing that. Running my own league one day. I know that's gonna take a lot of time.
Yeah.
That's way down the road, but that's just like my end goal, my main motivation.
Well, that's good. That's good that you have a next chapter already in mind, because I think that's the problem sometimes, is that fighters will get to a point in their career where maybe they, realize they need to retire earlier than they thought they would, or, they're just not ready to retire or whatever it is, because they've attached their whole identity to being a fighter. And so then they're not a fighter anymore, and then suddenly they don't know how to continue. Like, they don't know. It's almost like an identity crisis. And that happens when you change careers in any industry, but as a fighter especially, because, everything you do is public, and, your whole career can be, Googled online, and it hits a little different as a fighter. And so I think it's good for fighters to have a path of like where they want to go beyond just fighting. So that way, when you get to the point where you're like, okay, I've done everything I needed to do. I've proved everything to myself, and, I've accomplished everything. So now it's time to move on to the next chapter. And then, being a promoter is kind of a natural, it's one natural career path you can take. I mean, we've seen Jorge Masvidal do it with Gamebred, and he's, honestly, I think that's going to be huge. Like, I think bare knuckle MMA is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation before. I don't know if he owns the rule set or like how all the legal and business stuff of that works. So I don't know what his plan is for it, but I could totally see like the UFC buying into that, or like somebody big buying into it. So yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. But is that what you would want to do with like MMA, or would you want to be like focused on I don't know. I guess, would you be wanting to do like a regional type of show, or would you want to be wanting to do
I have
like,
different ways of how I've thought about standing out in the market.
Yeah.
I do want to do MMA with
Nice.
grappling and kickboxers that come on too. So it would be like a regional thing. I've always thought it'd be really cool to have like, how there's like dual meets in wrestling.
Yeah.
I thought that it would be cool to like have a dual meet like for MMA. You know what I'm saying? Like have a team,
Yeah,
like two
that'd be
teams,
really
like,
interesting.
Yeah, like, and then like in the point system for the team points would be a knockout or submission is 6 points, a TKO would be 5 points, a major decision would be 4 points, and then a split decision would be 3 points. And then yeah, you would just go the whole
Interesting.
weight class. Each team would have weights, and then you just go down the weight, and then whatever team has the most points at the end wins.
Interesting.
So I think that that'd be
Yeah.
a good thing. Yeah, I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, and I feel like that's something that is similar to like what PFL has been trying to do with like applying sports scoring and rules to MMA, which does make it more interesting to sports fans. So that would make MMA more interesting to wrestling fans, which would be really interesting. So yeah, I think that would be really cool.
It would
And
strengthen the team aspect too, because I think a lot of times, MMA, it is a team sport and it is an individual sport. But I think that if you have that, option, I think it'll bring, unity, to teams a lot more. Like, hey, we got to win this dual meet. We got this dual meet coming up. So
yeah,
we're gonna have, spar offs for each weight class, and then that's the team we're bringing.
yeah. I've always thought it would be cool to have like all the fights on one card be like one gym versus another gym. Like I've always thought that, like kind of like the Ultimate Fighter, how they have like the Ultimate Fighter tournament, like where it's
Even
like a
from out of
gym
town.
versus
Coming from
gym
out of
tournament.
town.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be really cool. I think that'd be fun. I have so many like crazy ideas, but I don't know how to apply them. I don't know how to I don't know how to execute them, but I'm like I have plenty of ideas for other people to go and execute. Because I think that would be sick. I think that would be cool because then it would be like, yeah, like a team, like camaraderie type thing. Like, I feel like people would get like really into it and get like, it would probably get a lot of attention too. And so
I
people
see that
would
being
watch it.
a future, avenue in MMA for sure.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, because it's just like the Ultimate Fighter, It's a little different because you already know the people, at your gym usually. But it'd be like a similar type of camaraderie like that we saw on that, which that's what makes the Ultimate Fighter fun to watch, is because it's like the whole team aspect and they're all like, it kind of just, you don't even have to try to do the trash talk or anything because it's all just gonna like people are gonna be interested in it no matter what because of that aspect. So it makes it easier to promote, I guess you could say. Because it's just like sports. Like people, they go root for their team, like that's, it kind of makes it more fun and it takes a little bit of the pressure off too of like it being such an individual sport. I think that would be fun. Yeah. But getting back to MMA, so, or getting back to the UFC. So next Saturday, or I guess this coming Saturday, we have Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev. I was curious, what are your thoughts on that fight? And if you have a prediction, let me know what your prediction is.
Well, I want Dustin to win. I want him to get the
I think everyone does.
I want him to win, but Islam Makhachev, that he looks really tough to beat. He looks really tough to beat.
He's
so I'd say my
scary
prediction. Like if I still gambled, if I bet money on it, I would have to say Islam Makhachev by decision. But
Yeah, I agree. I think that it depends, and I was just talking about this earlier, but it depends on, I think, how Islam's weight cut goes. If Islam has an easy weight cut, then I don't know many fighters that can beat him besides Arman maybe, but even that is kind of, I still think Islam is the favorite in every single fight at 155. Like, I can't think of really hardly anybody besides Arman and Gamrot that would even have a chance.
I'd like to see Arman beat Islam.
I would too.
Because Arman, I just started following him. Like I just started watching him after the last couple fights, and he just has next level confidence. You see him just walking out he just looks like he's ready to take on anyone at any time.
Yeah, I think he will be champion. I don't know if it's going to be against Islam because I don't know how the title picture is going to work out. I think he should get the next title shot, but with him being offered a title shot, which really I don't know. I don't agree with the way that was handled because, you know, they didn't offer it to him on a full camp. You know, they offered it to him not on short notice, but like not with a full camp's notice. So I would have liked to see them offer it to him with a full camp before giving it to Dustin. And I don't know the whole logistics of that or why they had to do it on the June 1st date or what the deal is. So I can't, you know, I don't know. I'm not part of those conversations. But I do think that Arman obviously deserves the title shot more than anybody in that division at this point. I mean, he's the only one that didn't get like completely obliterated by Islam when they fought. So,
Yeah.
and I know, you know,
What year was
Gaethje,
that? I remember
Gaethje was like, that was, what year was it?
2019.
I know Arman was like 22, I think. It was his
Probably
debut in the UFC.
Okay.
Yeah, it was his first fight in the UFC, and he took it on short notice, too. I think he took it on, like, I've heard 5 days notice, I've heard 2 weeks notice, but I think it was, like, 2 weeks notice that he took it on. So, yeah, and he actually did pretty well in that fight. I mean, that was one of Islam's tougher fights, and he got taken down, not for very long. I mean, it was barely got him down, but he got him down, and it counted as a takedown. So that was the first time that Islam had ever been taken down in his MMA career, or at least in the UFC. So, and I think that was Islam's 5th fight in the UFC. So it was kind of a mismatch at that time. So, you know, and Islam was a heavy favorite. So it's not like, you know, it was like the odds were stacked against Arman a little bit in that situation. So
Was that his only loss?
No, I think he has one other loss. I'm going to look it up right now. Arman, I know he has at least 2 losses, I think. He might have more.
Okay.
Because he lost to Gamrot. I know he lost to Gamrot, and he lost to...
Yeah.
Who else did he lose? He lost to somebody else, I think. Oh, yeah. It was way before the UFC. It was in 2015. He got knocked out in the first round. But since then, his only losses have been decision losses to Gamrot and Makhachev. So, yeah, pretty solid resume that he has. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that he gets the next title shot. What I'm worried about is there's so many moving parts at lightweight right now. Because if Dustin wins, which would be amazing, that would be insane. It would be unbelievable if he won. But if he wins, then there's probably going to be a rematch, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there would have to be.
Unless Dustin Poirier retires right after.
And that's what we hope for. If he wins, that he retires, so we don't have to see that fight again.
Because that's been his whole goal, is be UFC champ, you know. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be great if he retires, and then I would hope they would offer it to Arman. But you know what? If Max Holloway beats Ilya, he's honestly just as worthy of the title shot, in my opinion, after knocking out Justin Gaethje, and not only knocking him out, but if that fight would have gone to the scorecards, we all know who would have won the fight too. So he didn't just beat him by knockout; he won every minute of that fight. So it's like, yeah, I wouldn't be mad at a Holloway title shot at 155 either. But so that's the only exception that I would be like cool with, is if they gave the title shot to Holloway. What I'm worried about, and I don't know, this probably won't happen, but I know Conor and Chandler are fighting, and you know, I don't know what's going to happen in that fight, and I don't know if either of them want to fight at 155 anymore after this, but I'm assuming if they were willing to, that they, at least Conor, if he wins, would probably be able to pull off getting a undeserved title shot at lightweight. Let's just be honest, because DC already said it. He already said that he wouldn't be mad at Conor getting a title shot. And you know what? I don't think he should at all, but he could do it. Like, if anyone can, it's Conor.
I mean, he's done so much UFC.
Yeah,
He's definitely
that's
not the
the
best
thing.
guy in the world. Everyone knows that, but he's done a
No.
lot with UFC. But I don't know. I don't really know what to
It's
say about all
crazy.
that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't know. I mean, he's Connor, so like he can kind of do. He's kind of like John Jones, like, but on a different level, even from John Jones. John Jones to me had a more dominant career than Connor, obviously. So it's a little different, but Connor has more star power, I would say, at this point. John Jones has a lot of star power too, though. I mean, especially with like the OG fans and the people who've been watching the sport for a long time. So Connor has more of like the newer fan base, I would say, than John Jones does. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And that fight is really interesting. Him versus Chandler at 170. I don't even know what to think about that fight. I really don't. Because I want to say Chandler wins just because, you know, he's obviously probably been taking it more seriously as far as his training goes. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know. What do you think about that matchup?
I don't know. I could see Connor catching him with something and knocking him out, but I think I'd rather see Chandler win. Obviously, he's from Missouri.
Yeah,
Probably
of
just because he's from
course.
Missouri, I'd rather see Chandler win. But I think I could see Connor clipping him with something, with like using the reach advantage,
Yeah.
and like getting with a step back hook or something.
That's the thing, because Connor, I think, is either the same height or maybe an inch taller than Chandler. So there's no
With the
like
reach,
height disadvantage, and the reach is way
yeah,
longer too. So yeah, that makes it really interesting. And Chandler tends to get a little reckless. And it's
that's why.
interesting because yeah, like his fighting style doesn't match his martial arts background at all. It's interesting. Like he fights so much differently than you would expect just looking at, you know, his background and how he's trained and you know, his wrestling pedigree and all of that. You would expect, you know, a much different fighter from him, but
Same with Justin
he's
Gaethje, the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, cuz did Gaethje wrestle D1 too?
D1, yeah, Northern
Yeah.
Colorado Division 1, yeah. He was an
Yeah.
All-American.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. But yeah, Chandler does get a little reckless. It's weird. Like he'll dominate a first round. Like his first rounds are the best usually. With the exception of Tony and a couple other fights, his first rounds are usually incredible because he's so explosive. But I could absolutely see Connor finding a lot of counter opportunities. Especially when he's kind of getting more into like when he starts brawling a little bit, which he loves to do, and he's entertaining, and that's why he's able to get a fight like Connor. You know, if he wouldn't have, you know, been as entertaining as he was in the UFC, win or lose, I don't think he would have gotten that fight. So if he was just winning fights, you know, by decision and using his wrestling, then, you know, he might not have gotten this opportunity. So I think that his style is very unique in the way that it doesn't always win him fights, but it does very well for his fight career and his promotion. So from a money standpoint, which I think is probably more important to him than winning a UFC title, is probably, you know, being financially independent. So I think that is also, you know, respectable. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, some fighters, they care more about winning a title and they already have, you know, maybe other avenues of their income, or maybe they just don't care about money, you know. Not everybody cares about money that much. So it's like certain fighters, just that's not important to them. But I think for Michael Chandler, he's really figured out how to get the best possible opportunities to set him up for success financially in MMA, which is really respectable, and it's cool that he's been able to do that. So
Yeah, I'm happy for him. And you know, I'll be even happy if he can win. If he can somehow win, I'll be really happy for him. If I had to bet, I would say Connor by TKO.
Me too.
I think he's gonna clip him and then get some ground up, and the ref's gonna stop it.
yeah, and it's funny. I was leaning toward Chandler more. until I started watching some film. I was watching Oliveira versus Chandler when I was preparing for the Oliveira fight, and then I was watching Chandler versus Poirier. And Chandler, who else did he fight? He fought somebody else that I was getting ready for. I can't remember, but yeah. So I've been kind of watching him a little bit more and rewatching a lot of his old fights, and I'm like, oh, now I see why Conor is the favorite, which is crazy because Conor's been so inactive and he's coming off that injury, and he's been doing movies and like not training as much. So I'm like, that's crazy. But he's still Conor. So I don't know. I think if we see a classic Conor, then I think he's going to win.
Did you see the video of him with the beer and he was like sniffing it and he was like, he's like, oh, I want it so bad, but I can't. That had me laughing so hard.
That's funny. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. So you're an MMA fighter, obviously, and we talked about health, we talked about nutrition a little bit. What's your opinion on? Because I know like you've got your Conor McGregor and your John Jones that like they're kind of party animals. What's your thoughts on like alcohol with training and competing? What do you think about it?
For me, I don't drink any alcohol. I quit about 2 years ago. For me, I was like, I just had issues with it. Like I just personal issues with it. But as far as like fighters, if it's good for their health, I definitely don't think it's good for either their mental health or their physical health. And I think it'll only give you an advantage not drinking. That's just my opinion on it. I
agree. Yeah,
but there's people out there that aren't fighters that can have alcohol and act fine. But for me, it just wasn't for me, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the first time that I realized that alcohol was kind of holding me back was when I was training more. And I was just naturally not drinking as much whenever I was training, like, 3-4 days a week, because I could tell the difference in my training when I had even a couple drinks. And so that told me that, okay, well, my training is going to be better and I'm going to perform better if I don't drink. So then I just naturally kind of like got away from it. And then like I kind of got back into, socializing and stuff again and wanted to like hang out with my friends and stuff like that. And of course, then you have like a couple drinks and you're like, okay. And then I was like getting back into training. And then I was like, no, and not even like MMA or boxing or any of that. I was just lifting. And even that, while drinking seems like really difficult. So, and it doesn't even take much, like even just on the weekends. Cause like I had a rule where like I didn't want to drink during the week. So like I only liked to go out and drink on the weekends. But even that, it's like not only a time sacrifice, but it's also just like I could feel it like in my training sessions. They were horrible. Those were always like my worst training sessions when I had like even like 2 or 3 drinks the night before. So I did the same thing. Like, I think it was October of 2022. That was when I quit.
Mine was
September. Before that,
mine was September 4th, 2022. Really? Yeah. 2020.
Nice. Yeah. I had done like, that was actually why I did it in October, because I was just going to do, like, I used to do the sober October thing. Oh, so I would just, like, not drink all of October. And I always felt so good. And then I was like, you know what, maybe I should just do, like, 3 months or something of, like, no alcohol and see how I feel. And then once I kind of, like, stopped for a while, I was like, I really don't think that, at least for a long time, that I have any desire to drink, because, these are certain things that I want to do and accomplish, and I don't think that I will be able to do them as easily if I still drink, if that makes sense. So
I feel the same way.
Yeah, that's the point that I got to. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't really miss it anymore.
I don't miss it. I got in trouble a lot with it, so I don't like it. acting idiot. So gotten so many fights.
Yeah, I mean, I did dumb stuff too, for sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we all do. I think a lot of people do. They just can't admit it, so they are in denial. And there are a lot of people that I know that they can handle their alcohol very well, and they can not make stupid decisions. But it's not even just like getting arrested and like doing crazy stuff. It's not even just that. It's like making poor decisions in general, like just with like relationships or things you say to people, or, you know, acting, you know, angry, or some people get, you know, really hostile when they drink, and, you know, they snap really easily. And then, you know, some people, they have trouble with like financial decisions when they drink and stuff like that. And that was a problem for me. Like, I made way worse financial decisions when I was drinking than like when I'm not. So that was one thing that I realized. And so I was like, okay, you know, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not like, this isn't a problem necessarily, but it is a problem even without it being full blown alcoholism. It's still a problem. And I think it's okay to admit that and realize that, you know, just because you have a problem with alcohol, that does not label you as an alcoholic, and being an alcoholic isn't a bad thing. It just means that you've realized that there's a problem, and great news, there's a very easy way to fix it. You just don't use it. So
it takes some time, but yeah, once you get over the mental obsession part of it, it becomes so easy. Yeah, like you said, you don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I was curious about that because I'm always curious what different fighters, like how their lifestyle is outside of fighting and how that impacts their career. I think is really fascinating to me. And that's with all athletes too, because I don't think that you can train to 100% performance if you drink alcohol on a regular basis. Maybe one drink here and there, whatever. But on a regular basis, I don't know that, maybe for some people it is, but for the most part, I would say very difficult to do at 100%. But that's my
Not
opinion.
impossible, but definitely you're just hurting yourself by doing it. That's all it is. But
Yeah, it's interesting. But another thing that I wanted to ask you about is not only, you know, your training and all the preparation that you're doing. We kind of talked about that. We talked about your background. We talked about kind of, you know, your mental preparation for fights. And then we talked about your career, you know, your goals, like you want to end up going in fighting and competing in the UFC. And one thing that I want to ask you is, you know, it's so easy to get completely obsessed and completely, I mean, if you're in this sport, you're usually all in. You know, you're all in this community, in this sport, and that's one thing I love about it, is that it's a very strong community, and even though we're all kind of a little crazy, like we all have a very strong bond because of, you know, it's just, yeah, you're all in it, and it's easy to become obsessed with the sport. So how do you stay, I guess, how do you avoid getting like too burnt out, or, you know, having time to kind of relax your mind? Like you said before your fights, you know, you like to listen to podcasts and things like that, or how do you handle that?
Well, I'm happy you used the word obsessed, because I definitely, like my whole life, I get obsessed with things that like make me feel good, and things that I like sports and like stats and writing brackets and writing stories and all types of stuff. You know, I get addicted to stuff very easily, and I found MMA as like a positive, you know, way to fill that part of my brain. And video games are another thing, you know, that helped me quit gambling. I had a little bit of a gambling problem with blackjack for a little bit, and I quit that with video games. You know, I play a lot of video games now, and if I ever get that itch to go to the casino, I just, you know, play some video games instead, basically. You know, that's just how it is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, to answer your question about the obsessive thing, I use that in like MMA and everything. You know, I try to use it in a positive way now.
Exactly. Basically. Yeah. I think that's how all, you know, really true greatness is achieved is a lot of times people who have that like really obsessive personality and even sometimes a very addictive personality, a lot of times when they just figure out the right thing to channel it into and they don't allow themselves to be strayed off of the path, a lot of times, those are the people who are going to make it to like championship level. I mean, look at Alex Pereira. He was an alcoholic and, he was overweight, like, not that long before becoming the UFC champion. So I think that, and all athletes are different and all competitors are different, but I have noticed that there are a lot of athletes that have overcome things, like addiction or alcoholism, or not even related to that, other things that they've overcome in their life. But they always tend to have like that obsessed mentality of like just being completely engulfed in whatever they're doing and trying to become great at it. And sometimes that comes at an expense, sometimes people overtrain, and sometimes people, like I said, they kind of like get their whole identity wrapped into it, and so it can be difficult mentally. But I think if you, find ways to be involved in the community and pivot into other things when maybe you're injured or you can't train, I think that's important. And I think, also having goals outside of fighting for whenever your fight career is over, I think is probably another good way to, be obsessed and be all in on it, but not allow it to like completely, take over your life, and take over your, I guess, the way that you think. And, you still have other things in your life that keep you motivated. So I think that's important. But, yeah, it does take that obsessed mentality though. I really do believe that 100%. I don't know that you can achieve a championship, level of success in MMA without having that mindset, at least having a little bit of it. So, yeah, that's just what I've noticed from just interviews I've seen and talking to fighters and watching a lot of MMA that I've noticed a lot of trends, and that is a strong one that I have noticed. So, is there a fighter whose career that has inspired you the most?
I'd have to name like three. I would say, so first off, I'd say Charles Oliveira, because I really like how like people counted him out and, he came back and won a title. I really like that. So he's going to be the first person I name. And I've always said if I had to like mold my fighting style around three people, it'd be these three. And it'd be Khabib. So Khabib, Charles Oliveira, and Max Holloway. So those three all together is how I would like my fighting style to be, like mixed. And then like their attitude.
Yeah, that's a dangerous combination.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I'd say those three.
That's awesome. Yeah, because Charles, he's a very interesting fighter because he's a complete fighter. He's good everywhere, but he's very offensive everywhere. And whereas Khabib is like a little bit more, I wouldn't call him one-dimensional because like we've seen him, do some impressive things in his stand-up. It's not like terrible. Maybe earlier in his career wasn't the best, but I feel like Khabib is definitely very strong in grappling in one area. And then Holloway has very good takedown defense, is very hard to control on the ground, and then has very good striking. So they're all dangerous in a very different way. So if you combine them all together, yeah, I mean, that's like a 5-division champion right there.
and their attitudes too, like just their attitudes and their mental, just the way they think and talk and do interviews. Like, I think they're all three just really stand-up guys, All three good guys,
absolutely. Yeah, the only one that I didn't get to interview obviously was Khabib, so I'll never probably be able to do that unless he comes back. But I did get to chat with Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira at the media day at UFC 300, and that was one thing I noticed about them was their mindset. It just blew me away. And I had done, research, obviously. Like, I've been watching Holloway's career for years and Charles' career for years, so I already knew kind of had an idea of who they were, but I don't know, it was just kind of different seeing them in that environment. You kind of get more of like who they really are. And that's why I really liked doing the media day, because you get to sit there and, you know, you're not sitting directly in front of them, but, you know, you're talking to them, you're looking at them while you're talking to them, and it's in a more like peaceful, like calm setting where there's not a crowd cheering and, you know, it's not chaos. They don't want people to talk trash. You know, it's a very real version of them, a very raw and authentic version of them. So it was very cool to experience that. And getting questions with Charles was really cool because, and obviously he doesn't speak English, so it's not like we were like having a full-on conversation, but his translator is so good. Like the guy that does the translations for the a lot of the, I think he does more than just the Portuguese, but I think he speaks multiple languages. But he's a really nice guy too. He is so good at doing that job. And like I could tell like his passion came out like when he was talking to me and answering my question. Like it was almost like I was still talking to Charles. It was like Charles was like talking through him. It was unbelievable. But that was one thing that I noticed was just they have a chip on their shoulder, and they, you know, they believe in themselves 100%. And yeah, I think you have to have that. I think you absolutely have to have that.
Yeah. Hey, and you may have a chance to interview Habib at the press conference, because he might be there for Islam. You know, when Islam fights, he might be there right next to him. You never know.
Yeah, I'm not. I wonder if I'm assuming Habib will probably be in his corner. He wasn't for one fight. It was the fight right after Habib retired, I think. Mm-hmm. The first Islam fight, I think he didn't have Habib in his corner. So I'm wondering, I would imagine he'll probably be in his corner. I'm not going to that card, unfortunately. I wish I was. But yeah, that I'm trying to think too, because Habib, does he still have that promotion? The Eagle FC? Do you know if that's still around?
I heard that it went out of I'm pretty sure it went out of business. Like, I'm pretty sure he stopped doing it. I think he wanted to stop doing it. Because Kevin Lee was like,
I haven't heard much about it. Yeah, I haven't heard much about it. But I'm wondering if, like, I've always thought that Habib would never come back to MMA. But now I'm kind of wondering if maybe he would, now that he's not doing, like, maybe he thought he was just going to be a promoter and then, you know, now he's not. So, I mean, obviously he's focusing on coaching too, like especially with Islam. But I'm wondering if Islam moves up to 170, if Habib would come back. Because I think the only reason why he retired and stayed retired is so Islam could have his dominant, you know, reign as champion. Like
he just needs that one more to be 30-0. You know.
I know.
Go against Conor for the title. Conor versus Habib too. I don't think he would ever agree to that, though.
No.
I don't think Habib would ever agree to that. But I think he might fight somebody. He could fight somebody.
I want to see, you know what my dream fight is? Like my all-time dream fight that I want to see is Habib versus GSP. That's my dream fight.
That's a great one, yeah. That'd be great.
It would have to be at 170, but Habib ain't making 155, you know, right now. And not anytime soon. He's probably like 200 pounds at this point. So, yeah, I don't think he's... I think once you're out of it for so long, getting back to like cutting weight at an older age, you know, not that he's old, but like that's after being inactive that long, I think that would be probably pretty difficult for him to come back. And
I think that's the only fight that would actually motivate him to come back too. So I think you hit the nail, you know, spot on with that. Because, yeah, I think that's the only one. GSP is the only one I think that would actually motivate Habib to come back to get that 30-0. But
yeah. And then that, yeah, so I don't know. It would probably be, yeah, it would either have to be that, or I'm trying to think if there's even anyone else that would make any possible sense. I don't even think.
Tony wouldn't make sense.
I can't think of anyone. No.
Tony needs to go against somebody that he can beat and then retire. That's what Tony needs to do. And I'm a big Tony fan. I've always loved Tony Ferguson. I've always been a huge fan.
Yeah, it's hard not to love him. He was one of the first fighters that I really like. Was like, oh yeah, like I vibe with Tony. Like Tony's cool. I'm like, me and Tony have like the same mindset, like the same crazy mindset. And yeah, Tony's cool. I really like him. I don't know. Like I feel like Tony, he's probably just been fighting injured for a while, and you know, he's getting older. The weight cut's not getting easier. And he's one of those fighters that is just like has a savage work ethic to the point of like self-destruction. I think it's probably a good way to put it. And I've seen this a lot. I've seen this a lot with fighters where, you know, they work so hard to the point where they're not recovering, so they're just beating their body into the ground. And then it's going to negatively impact their longevity and their performances. I think that's part of what happened with him. It also could be a mental thing. I don't know. But I think a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that he's just not able to perform at 100%. And you can't compete on that level if you can't perform at 100%. You just can't. So, because he's probably been performing at like, you know, 75% at the most for a while. And I don't know, that's just who he is though, you know, like that's why he had David Goggins in his corner. Like David Goggins and Tony Ferguson have like the exact same kind of, you know, crazy mindset. So it makes perfect sense. And I think,
it's motivating too, but it's some of it's a little too much, a little too extra
it is
for me. But.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I think, you know what I think it might be? I think that there are some people that take more pride in their accomplishments, and then I think there are other people who take more pride in their effort and their work ethic. And I think that that might be more of Tony's purpose and motivation for what he does, is more of like being like, yeah, I did that. Like, you know, I did it. Even though I didn't want to do it, I did it. Like, you know, and I think that, you know, that's respectable in a lot of ways, but it is a recipe for self-destruction for sure, because especially in this sport, you know, longevity is important if you want to get to a championship level and you want to compete for a long time. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. But getting back to you, so do you have any fights booked? I mean, I know you're coming off of a win pretty recently. Hasn't even been like 2 weeks yet. So what are your plans? How soon do you want to get back in there? And
I want to fight for the NFA bantamweight belt next. That's what I want. You know, if they want to, you know, if they want to set that up, that'd be perfect. Nice. I think me and Mike talked about it. You know, that's what we think would be perfect for next.
Cool. Do you know who the current champion is at 135, or do they have one? Oh,
they don't have one at 135, so they gotta, we'd have to find someone.
Well, that'll be interesting to see who you get matched up with. That'll be really cool. And I think I saw they were doing 5 shows this year, or 4 shows this year at the Armory. Do you know when their next one is? I want to say August or something.
I think August.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, there's a few shows I've seen already that are kind of planning for August too, like Stand Up Fight Series is in August, and that'll be a fun month for combat sports here, so that's exciting. Well, that's very cool. That's really interesting that you're, you know, kind of taking this direction with, you know, moving down in weight. And, you know, it's good that I think it's good you're doing it at this pace, though. I think that's really smart, because you already have, you know, built a resume, and you already have, you know, 100% finish rate, all submission wins. And then now you're, you know, taking on a new challenge basically with the weight cutting. So, you know, you've already got like the fighting part figured out. And then now, you know, you're kind of like, okay, let's figure out the weight cut part, and then see, you know, how you compete in a different division. And, yeah, that's really exciting. So, I guess what are some things that you have been working on, or what are some things that you want to showcase in your next performance, and what can we expect to see from you?
I've been working a lot on my boxing,
Nice.
boxing at night, you know, and then obviously continuing my takedowns, wrestling, and been getting better at leg kicks too. I'm not much of a kicker. once I go pro, I'll love to be doing knees. Like, I'm gonna love throwing knees and elbows and stuff. But I'm just not. I don't throw too many kicks, but I know that they're very useful, especially with leg kicks. Using that to set up. That and punch, or use my punch to set that up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to get striking down. I want to be seen as a true mixed martial artist, not just a specialist. So I know right now I'm seen as a specialist. Wrestling and grappling. So yeah, I just want to showcase my striking, start landing more strikes. Get my first knockout.
That's awesome. That's a great goal. Yeah, show that you have more than, one area of your game. And that's awesome. And that's great, because then you're really going to find your style as a fighter. And when you get into your pro career, that's where that gets really important, is to have, a style of, similar to Charles, like we've been talking about. He's obviously very dangerous on the ground. He's one of the most high level black belts in the UFC. But guess what? He also has really high level Muay Thai too, and he will literally destroy your face with elbows. So it's good to have not one area, but also the threat of another area. So like, if you get really good at boxing and really good at striking, well, guess what? You still have the threat of the takedown. You still have the threat of the submission. So that alone is going to make you more dangerous, even with somebody who is at the same level as you with striking, because they don't have that option. They don't have that. So that's an advantage that you're always going to have. So that's really cool that you're kind of developing yourself into a more complete mixed martial artist. So that's really exciting and strategic and smart. So last thing before you go, and of course, if there's, anything else you want to shout out, any sponsors or any of that you want to thank, the floor is yours. But wanted to ask you about Saint Charles MMA, training there. Mike Rogers was just in Charles Johnson's corner. Obviously, a lot of excitement going on there. And it was really cool to see him cornering. I thought that was awesome. And tell me a little bit about what you guys have going on, and who are some other fighters there that we should be kind of on the lookout for.
Okay. So yeah, as always, I want to thank my coaches and teammates at Saint Charles MMA, and everybody that's a part of Team Vaghi. And yeah, we've had a lot of fighters fight recently and get some wins. Cody McGee, he just defended his Shamrock title. I know Brad Woolfolk, he's about to fight soon. I've been training a lot with him one-on-one. We've been doing a lot of like MMA sparring just on our feet, just getting comfortable, just striking in the pocket. So I want to shout out Brad. He's been helping me out a lot.
Nice.
And then, yeah, I'm just continuing to train there. I want to be their next UFC fighter. That's what I want. I want to represent St. Charles MMA, Team Vaghi, in the UFC. I know I got a while to get there. I got a lot more accomplishments to get, to accomplish before I get there. Got more, belts to win. And I also want to shout out Wentzville Holt Wrestling Club. That was my wrestling team growing up.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of great coaches there. They were actually at my last fight too. A lot of them. Jason
Really?
Moore, Chris Kyle, Andrew Hammond. They were there at my fight, so it was nice, seeing them and giving them a hug right after I walked out of the cage. So I want to
That's
shout out
awesome.
them. Also, Sean Smith. He was also one of my coaches growing up for Wentzville Holt. But yeah, just without being a part of Wentzville Holt Wrestling and being a part of St. Charles MMA, I don't even know where I'd be right now. So I'm just very grateful for both.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, it's been really, really cool getting to know you and learning more about, kind of where you came from and, your views on different things and different topics. I appreciate the time and appreciate you, engaging in conversation with me about all different things, not just MMA. So it's been fun. And of course, if you get a fight booked, you have something coming up, let me know. I'd love to try and cover it if I have the time. So absolutely let me know whenever you have something going on, and I'll try to at least watch it. I'm not always able to make it to all the events, but I can always at least watch them. So yeah, definitely let me know. Keep me posted on your career, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
I appreciate it, and I'm very humbled that you invited me on this show with everything you got going on. You're at the UFC press conferences, so thank you so much. To have me on this show, like this really means the world to me.
Awesome. Yeah, likewise. Absolutely. Well, you have a great rest of your night, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.